Afternoon was progressing into evening at the apartment complex when a knock came at my door. That's odd, I thought. I wasn't expecting anybody. Pressing my face against the door, I peered outside through my peephole. Looking outside through the small hole, I saw nobody. Absolutely nobody. Just the wind blowing a small piece of trash past my door outside on the sidewalk. Telling myself that maybe I was hearing things did me little good. I know what I heard. Maybe it was just one of my neighbors doing something that caused a bang on their side of the wall, and I just mistook it for a knock at my door. Yeah, maybe, I thought. But deep down, I knew that didn't feel right. In any case, nobody was there now. So I sat back down on my couch and unpaused the episode of the show I had been watching. Ever since the pandemic lockdown shut everything down a couple of years ago, my entire lifestyle has changed drastically. I stayed indoors at first out of necessity, but then as the restrictions began to ease and things started opening up and resembling something akin to normalcy, now I stayed indoors out of habit. My life now was binge watching and streaming whatever shows were being pumped out like slop into a pig trough. After some time had passed, the sun was falling closer towards the horizon outside when another knock came at my door. I heard it this time. I know I did. Unmistakably, a knock at my door. Plain as day. I jumped up and rushed across the room to peek out the little peephole on my door. There was somebody there this time. A pizza delivery driver was toting in one arm one of those insulated bags that they have to keep the pies hot and fresh. I recognized the chain on his hat as being from one of the local places. I had eaten there often. Well, not there. That would imply that I leave my apartment. I don't leave my apartment. I meant that I had eaten from there, ordered delivery from them probably more often than I feel comfortable admitting. Despite that fact, I hadn't ordered any pizza. Not this evening. "You got the wrong place, bud," I yelled through the door, still watching him through my little peephole in the door. He looked confused, like he either couldn't understand me or hadn't heard what I said. My hand went for the doorknob on instinct, but I caught it at the last second. Something wasn't right. I had ordered from that place all the time, and yet I'd never seen this guy. It was always the same 3 people that delivered, and he wasn't one of them. He looked plain enough. Maybe too plain. Too generic. "I didn't order pizza. Go away." I yelled slowly, enunciating every syllable so that my words couldn't be misconstrued. It seemed that he heard me that time. Looking down at the receipt taped to the side of the bag, realization crossed his face, as if he just realized he was at the wrong apartment number. Everything about it, from the realization on his face to the pantomime of him smacking the side of his head in epiphany, seemed forced. As soon as he walked away and out of sight, I slowly turned the deadbolt on my door, locking it. I just had a bad feeling, and that feeling told me, don't trust that guy. As I went back to my couch and unpaused the show, I couldn't shake that funny feeling. I tried to recall what exactly it was about that guy that seemed so shady. Yeah, that's the word, shady. I had to go back a few minutes on my show because whenever I got out of my own thoughts and started paying attention to what was happening on the TV, I realized I was missing plot points. Important plot points. The sun outside was coloring the horizon with brilliant colors and hues, and yet another knock came at my door. Slightly irritated because this episode was just getting good and that I was interrupted yet again, I paused it and went to my door. I looked outside through the peephole to see this time it was a couple of little girls. Their tan uniforms and bright red sashes with numerous little badges denoted them as Girl Scouts. One of them had a little red wagon in tow, overflowing with boxes of cookies, no doubt. As I stood there, debating on whether or not to even answer, that familiar fear came creeping up my spine again. During this whole pandemic thing, I'll admit that I had developed and sprouted a few new phobias. They came natural given the situation and joined the club of my already existing and ever-growing list of things I feared. Coronaphobia, it's been termed, and it quickly became my new biggest fear. It's not just the fear of contracting the virus, but everything associated with it. Public places, social situations, objects, and the biggest of them all, contact with people. Like a germaphobe licking a doorknob, that chill running through my spine sent shivers through my nervous system as I shuddered. I physically jumped when the little girl had knocked again. I had made up my mind right then and there. I just stay quiet and they'll go away. They'll move on if I just leave it be. I looked through the peephole again to see them backing up their little red wagon and walking away, watching them like a hawk. As I was scanning them and noticing how generic they looked, the one pulling the wagon said, "He can't stay in there forever," as they disappeared around the corner and from my sight. What the hell does that mean? Why did she say that? Were they referring to me? I tried to brush it off. They were just kids after all. Or were they? All day long, strangers have been knocking, every single one of them trying to get me to open my door. Why? What was their plan? They all looked so shady or generic. Like if you had an AI produce an image of a pizza guy or a couple of Girl Scouts. Nothing about them stood out at all, and yet because of that, everything about them stood out. Stock images knocking at my door. I tried to calm down. A cup of coffee did help. There was no conspiracy, and if there was, what was it? No. Every instance had a perfectly good explanation. That first knock? Probably just some kids playing Ding Dong Ditch. The second knock? The new delivery guy misread the apartment numbers on the ticket. The third one? Innocent little Girl Scouts selling cookies to raise money for some annual trip or something. All obvious, perfectly good explanations. I've got to stop reading so much into these mundane occurrences. I mean, that's what my psychologist says. That I have a tendency to run with my delusions, whatever that means. Now that I think about it, Dr. Johnson looks pretty generic too. And that name, Johnson, that's the most generic of all names. I don't think I'll be contacting him on Zoom anymore. Those pills he prescribed me didn't even work. I mean, they kind of worked, but only because they made me feel so sluggish and sleepy. It's hard to be delusional when you feel like a zombie all day. The sunlight was fading and dusk was fast approaching when a knock came at my door. I lifted the remote to pause my show, but it was already paused. Had I forgotten to hit play after those things wearing Girl Scout uniforms tried to trick me into opening my door and going outside? This time, with my eyes glued to the peephole, I saw a young man wearing a nice white dress shirt, fancy black slacks, and a bicycle helmet standing serendipitously on my threshold. A bike parked on the sidewalk behind him. The smile on his face was polite and non-threatening. That was the only reason why I didn't yell at him to go away from the start. That and because he didn't look generic. He had too many freckles and acne that made him stand out. Yes, I asked loudly through the door. "Hello, sir. I was wondering if I could have a moment of your time," he asked, respect and politeness oozing from his voice. "What do you want?" I yelled after taking a moment to build up my courage. "What do you people want?" I yelled what I hoped would be a rhetorical and needless question. Not necessarily at the young man, but at the outside world in general, at whatever had been trying to lure me out. The young man's smile faded for an instant, as if he had experienced something akin to my reaction countless times before. As quickly as it faded, though, it was reapplied and reinforced. "I want what any decent and God-loving person wants, sir. I want to do my part and save as many souls as possible. I promise, sir, just a quick moment of your time." I wanted to trust this kid from the moment I saw him. He wasn't generic, didn't look generic like those others. What if he was telling the truth? And there really was something out there? What if something that wanted to lure me outside and take my soul was lurking somewhere out there? And he wanted to save people from it. Wanted to save me from it. He didn't look generic. Not like those others. I was torn. What if? Some shred of logic fought with the rest of my paranoid, fear-addled brain. I won't come outside. You'll have to come inside here, but if I let you inside, you have to promise. You have to promise me that you're not generic and that you'll tell me everything you know about this thing. Can you do that for me? I shouted. The young man agreed with a curt, "Yes, sir." Before I unlatched the door, I quickly ran into my kitchen and grabbed a large butcher knife, the biggest one I had. Concealing it behind my back, I unlocked the door with a shaky hand and slowly, in small degrees, opened the door. I winced as the fading light of dusk illuminated my cave-like apartment. I was expecting, something. I was ready for anything as soon as I opened the door. But when no boogeyman came rushing towards me, I knew I had made the right decision in trusting this kid. He really was trying to help me, and those generic things out there knew it. Maybe they were afraid of him. Yeah, they had to be. If that was true, that meant he had the answers that I needed if I was going to avoid, or God forbid, fight off whatever was trying to trick me into coming outside. I motioned for the young man to quickly step inside, peering around the corners into the outside world for something generic waiting to pounce. As soon as he was inside, I quickly shut the door behind him and hastily engaged the deadbolt. "Okay, I think we're safe. Now tell me, what do you know about it?" I asked, trying to remain calm and on the brink of failing. "Well, sir, we believe in very similar things. Things that most people believe, but there are some things that we feel that they have got wrong." He had my full attention as I loosened my white-knuckle grip on the knife behind my back. "Yes. Go on." "Well, sir, most others believe that he is a trinity. Our beliefs diverge there slightly, sir. We believe that he is one, and that dividing his being into three is just wrong, that it takes away from his grandeur," the young man said matter-of-factly. "Are you sure about that, kiddo? So far I've counted 3 of them out there," I stated. Was it possible that this kid didn't know as much about the situation as I thought he did? "How sure are you about this? Are you willing to gamble your life on it?" I asked. "We don't believe in gambling, sir, but yes, I trust my internal soul to that information." He sounded so sure. I thought it might be cocky of him, but cocky is good. That means he had confidence. Confidence is something you want in someone who wants to save your soul. "Also, sir, I know that most people believe he was resurrected. We differ in that belief. While we can agree he died for our sins, we believe that the resurrection was more spiritual in nature, sir," he said. What kind of creatures are we dealing with out there? I thought. If this young man was to be believed, it could shapeshift. There weren't 3 of them like I'd counted, but it was one single entity. Plus, it not only fed on our souls, but it was dying to get at our sins. Whatever the hell that meant. I mean, of course it wanted our souls. The thing had died and lost its own, only to be resurrected as a soulless generic husk. This was worse than I thought. While this was terrible news, it felt good to have my paranoia validated for once. "So, how do we beat this thing, this generic devil?" I asked, staring intensely into his eyes. By God, this kid was cocky. For me to ask a question like that and his reaction to be a smile, he was the real deal. "With prayer, sir. All things are possible through prayer," was his answer. So caught up I had been mulling over these revelations, my grip on the knife behind my back must have momentarily eased. As the knife slipped between my fingers, it fell, point first, sticking into my wooden floor. As his eyes glared at the erect blade protruding upward from the floor, that smile that had beamed at me turned into a mouth agape. He stared at it, and then me, then at the knife again. His previously friendly eyes were now wide in terror. I glanced down at the knife, giving it a dismissing wave of my hand. "Don't worry about that. I need you to teach me the prayer. We've got to kill this thing for good." It happened suddenly then. Before I knew what was happening, his foot struck my crotch. Struck it hard. As I lay on the floor, writhing in pain and fighting off waves of nausea, the young man was fumbling with the lock on my door. "Why?" was all I could scream as he unlatched it and ran off into the twilight. It's all so obvious now that I think about it. He wasn't really sent here to save me, no. He was working for that generic beast. He was its lapdog, its pet. Sent here to taunt me, feed me false information, and probably worst of all, give me hope. I crawled to the still open door and slammed it shut, straining upwards to re-engage the lock. After a couple of minutes, the pain receded enough for me to stand. That leads up to where I am now. Since that demon tricked me by sending its lackey, I've been pacing about, typing this story out on my phone. There's been a big commotion outside. I barricaded my door and windows using furniture. Strange creatures swarm about outside, not even bothering to shapeshift into generic forms anymore. I'll admit it, for a time I thought that maybe I had just made it all up. That I maybe just ran with my delusions like my psychiatrist said. That moment of supposed clarity was shattered when I climbed up onto the couch barring the door and peeked outside through my peephole and saw them. I can see their true forms. Dead, soulless eyes stare back at me above the mandibles and pinchers protruding from their mouths. They bark our language back at me, which means that they've been here long enough to know our tongue. It's unnaturally loud when they speak and make their demands for me to step outside. I won't though. I won't let them devour my soul. I know what to do. I still have the knife, and once I send this, I'll do it. Night has fallen outside, and there are many knocks at my door, loud knocks. They have some sort of device. They're wielding it and attempting to bash down my door. If you get a knock and look out the peephole, if the person is a stranger and looks too generic, do not open your door.